The Pacific Northwest and Seattle in specific have a lot going for it. However, it's not all sunshines and rainbows. There are a number of people that don't like living over in Seattle. They've moved over here and ended up regretting their move. In this video, we're going to talk about the reasons why people regret moving here. As always, I'm Bryce Greenleaf, your local real estate agent here in the greater Seattle area. But like I said, this video is going to be about kind of the negatives about moving over here to Seattle. A lot of you watch my videos here when you're looking to make the move over to Seattle or one of the surrounding suburbs. And I want to talk about some of the things you should be aware of before you make the move to make sure the move makes sense for you and it's the right spot. Now, I'll preface this by saying I've helped dozens of people move over here, and it's very rare. I actually can't think of anybody off the top of my head that has regretted moving here that I've personally helped that decided this wasn't the area for them and they ended up leaving. I do not have anybody like that. However, I do know there are a number of people that are moving out of Seattle. There's a lot of people that don't like living in this area for various reasons. So I scoured the internet. I went on Reddit. I went on Quora. I looked at all the forums and tried to come up with some specific posts and reasons of why people are leaving Seattle after living here and giving you my opinion on those issues. All right, so we've got number one here. You see on the screen, this gentleman has been here for about 10 years, loves many things about it, but is thinking about leaving. The first thing that he quotes here, the first reason that he gives is the wildfire season. Now, yes, wildfires here are certainly a thing in the Seattle area, and every year can be a little bit different on the severity of those wildfires. Now, there's two things to think about here when we're talking about wildfires. One, is it going to affect your home and your safety? And two, the air quality. Point number one, most of you, almost pretty much all of you, if you're living in the Seattle metropolitan area, you're not going to be affected by a wildfire where you're going to have to evacuate your home and leave. These fires are coming from eastern Washington, sometimes they're coming from Canada, sometimes they're coming from down south, and that the wind is blowing that smoke into the Seattle area, and that's causing poor air quality. This does happen in the summer, and it seems to be getting a little bit worse every year. Now, is it to the point where you can't enjoy your summer and you can't be outside at all? No, not at all. It's a very small percentage of the year where you are going to struggle with this. But yes, there could be a week stretch where the air quality is going to be very poor and you're not going to be able to go outside and enjoy the outdoors. So just keep that in mind. That is something that can happen. But no, it's not going to take away a half of your summer or a quarter of your summer. It's going to be smaller stretches. Just this last summer, we went through all of June, July, and August without any serious issues with wildfire smoke over here. We didn't get larger issues until September came. So we got pretty much our entire summer here without having to deal with it. Now, the second reason he quotes here is the cost of living in this area. Says many of his friends have moved to places like Burien and Tacoma to cut costs, and they no longer see each other anymore because people are having to focus on living in a place where they can afford more home or just a home in general. And yes, cost of living here in Seattle is an issue for many people. A lot of places on the East Coast and the West Coast, that's going to be an issue when you're in a coastal city, especially a city that has had a tech boom over the recent decade or so. Now, I see a lot of my clients, a lot of people moving up here that I help buy a home are coming from California and some of those more expensive places, and Seattle is actually a little bit of a break on prices for them. But for those coming from middle America and other areas that aren't so expensive, yes, that is something you have to be aware of. Median home prices here can be more expensive. In Seattle, the median home price is right around $900,000 right now. The entire metropolitan area as a whole is closer to $750,000. There's a lot of great suburbs around here where you can find a more affordable home. But yes, you need to be prepared that this is going to be a more expensive place to live, specifically with home prices, than a lot and most of the rest of the country. All right, let's look at another post here. Let's see what this person says. So, stationed in Tacoma about 5 years ago, moved to Federal Way, and now commuting to Seattle for work. Originally from Southern California. We miss home. We miss going fast on the freeway. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know if people in California are driving double the speed limit on the freeway, and here they're going the speed limit or just over. I'm not sure what to tell you. People drive over here how they drive. There's a lot of transplants over in the Seattle area, so a lot of people that aren't used to driving in the rain, and yeah, that's going to slow down traffic. They don't know how to drive in the snow. That's going to slow down traffic. If you're talking about regular everyday driving on a normal regular day. I don't know if you want to go faster on the freeway. I'm not sure what to tell you. There are speed limits for a reason. Let's see, what else does he say here? One other thing he brings up is good food options. So I've heard this a few times here and there from people that think that Seattle doesn't have great food options. Yeah, if you're comparing it maybe to some of the other larger cities like Los Angeles and New York, maybe that's the case. Maybe we don't have nearly as many great food options around here. If you're comparing it to the rest of the country, I would slightly disagree with that. There's a lot of variety over here when it comes to great food. You've got pretty much anything you can want, for the most part, is here in the Seattle area. Now, you start with seafood. Of course, we're right on the water, right on the Puget Sound. So there's very few places that you can go in the US that have as good of seafood as Seattle does. Now, you have a lot of other cuisines all over the area. You have Thai food, you have Indian food, you have very good Italian spots, you have Mexican food. Now, yeah, the Mexican food's not going to be like it is in San Diego down south, or in Texas or somewhere down there. Yeah, of course, it's not going to be as good, but there is decent Mexican food spots all over the place. You're going to have Chinese food, you're going to have Greek joints. There's a lot of fine dining, very nice restaurants in downtown Bellevue or downtown Seattle that are very upscale, fancy places. And you have a lot of really great small, local hole-in-the-wall places and everything in between. So there are a lot of options for eating over here. I would disagree with the fact that it's not a good place to eat. If you're comparing it to like a New York City or a Los Angeles, I'll give you that probably. But for most people, there's going to be plenty of great food options around this area. He goes on to say, we think because we grew up with the sun and heat all our lives and now have come to dark, cold, and gloomy Seattle, it's having a major effect on our mood. This is absolutely a real thing that you should be aware of. They call it seasonal depression around here. Now, there's the trade-offs, right? There's very few places that you're going to live where you've got perfect weather all year round. Maybe Southern California gets close to checking that box, but outside of that, there's trade-offs. It depends what you want. You can live in other places in the US where you're not going to have as many gray, overcast days and you're going to see the sun a lot, but you're going to have more extreme temperatures. You're going to have much warmer and hotter summers that are going to get, over 90, 100 degrees on a very consistent basis. And you're going to get very cold, snowy winters that might get into the teens or single digits for temperatures very often and get a lot of snow. Neither of those things happen around Seattle very often at all. It's a much more mild climate. We really get a mild 4 seasons. Now, the trade-off to that is the weather is much more gloomy. It's much more gray. About half the days, a little less than half the days in Seattle will be sunshiny days, and the other half are going to be gray, overcast, gloomy type days. Now, another part that people talk about all the time is the Seattle rain and how much it rains over here. What you've got to remember is we don't often get torrential downpours. Very often it is a misty, drizzly, just kind of that gloomy day. Sometimes it'll be misty, drizzly, and gloomy in the morning, and then it'll break out in the afternoon. But on average, yes, we get a lot less sun, especially in those winter months, than other parts of the country. So you've got to be aware of that. Some people love it. I'm personally one of those. I would much rather have that than the extreme temperatures through the year. In the summer and the winter, I really don't like extreme temperatures. Not a big fan of snow. I can't survive in the 100+ degree heat. I hate it. So personally, I'm totally okay with the gloomy weather, knowing that I have a much more mild climate. All right, let's look at post number 3 here. So this person says, moved to West Seattle in 2012 and couldn't believe how amazing it was. Fast forward to 2021, I could not wait to leave. From the homelessness drug boom and the lack of willingness to address these issues. Yes, this is another problem that you should be aware of. That's also important to provide some clarity on. So in Seattle proper, downtown Seattle, we absolutely have an issue with homelessness. What comes along with that is trash on the streets, graffiti in a lot of places, tent cities. You'll see public drug use all over the place, and the city has not done a good job of enforcing this. There's no way to sugarcoat that. They have let these things happen and get worse year after year. It was not like this when I was a kid, but it has become increasingly worse every single year, and it is a serious problem downtown. Now, when we talk about that, I also do know a number of people that love living in downtown Seattle, and it doesn't bother them because they feel like Seattle It offers a lot for them in terms of walkability, in terms of great jobs, in terms of things to do, in terms of the culture and the artsy creativeness that they're looking for in certain areas. They still feel like Seattle is a great place to live for them. But a lot of people are turned off by those homelessness issues and what is surrounded by that. What's also important to know is in my videos, and most of the people that are moving over here, a lot of the people that are moving over here are not necessarily looking to live right in Seattle proper. A lot of you are looking to live in the suburbs. And this issue in downtown Seattle does not spread to most of the suburbs. Now, there are some directly south of Seattle along I-5 and some further up north along I-5 in Seattle that will have some similar issues on a smaller scale. But the majority of the suburbs outside of Seattle do not struggle with this. They don't struggle with homeless encampments and public drug use and graffiti all over the place. This is mostly a Seattle proper issue, and not even every single neighborhood. There are certainly neighborhoods in Seattle that are better than others. But if you're moving to the suburbs, don't be necessarily scared away from people saying this, because very often it's not an issue in most of the suburbs around here. So just keep that in mind. All right, we've got one more we're gonna look at, one more post here. So this person says, my main issue is the weather. Even though many places around to hike and rest, you can't actually enjoy them because of the rain. This is a personal thing, I think, too, with, like I mentioned before, the amount of rain we get here in terms of annual rainfall, we're not even close to like the top 10 or top 15 or top 20 cities in the US when it comes to annual rainfall. The reason for that is because we don't get very many torrential downpours. When it comes to the number of days of rain, yes, we're much higher on the list. But like I said, that rain is typically a much lighter rain, misty, drizzly type rain. I know a lot of people that don't let that stop them from enjoying the outdoors around here, because all you gotta do is throw on your hood and go for a hike. Honestly, some of the hikes are really cool if you go in one of those misty, drizzly, kind of wet days and you go up a hike with trees covered in moss, and it's actually kind of a really cool atmosphere. We have the mountain pass nearby where you can go mountain biking, you can go skiing and snowboarding, snowshoeing in the winter times. There's still a lot of stuff you can do around here outdoors in those winter months, even if it's a little bit colder or a little bit wet. Now, average temperatures, average daily highs in the winter months around here are in the 40s. They're not in the 30s, they're not in the 20s. Yes, you will get some days in the 30s and 20s, not the 20s very often, but you'll get a few stretches here and there, maybe in the winter, where we've got some 20-degree days on the highs. It's still a very doable climate to go out and be able to enjoy some of the outdoor activities without having to stay hunkered in the whole time. On top of that, he says, of course, there's no state tax, but the sales tax makes up for it. So I'm not sure what he means by the sales tax makes up for it. We're one of 7 states in the US that does not have a state income tax. That's one of the big reasons people move here. And this gentleman is saying the sales tax makes up for it. Yes, we have on average a little bit higher sales tax than the national average. In Washington state, the average tax when you combine both state tax and a local tax is about 9.3%. When you're in Seattle, you're going to be paying closer to 10%. Depending what city, if you're specifically in Seattle or if you're in one of the suburbs, you're going to be paying closer to 10%. The national average for state and local tax, actually the national median point, is 7%. So you're going to spend 2 to 3% more in that sales tax versus the national average. If you go and look at, and that's obviously what you're being taxed on goods you're purchasing. If you look at your income, what you're being taxed on every dollar that you make, and you're not paying any income tax here in Washington state, and you're coming from another state, maybe like California or New York, where you're paying 10 or 13% in state income tax, even if you're paying 5 to 8% in another state somewhere, you're still saving far more in taxes on that state income tax than you're spending additionally in sales tax. So yes, our sales tax is a little bit higher, but you're saving an exponentially larger amount on that income tax. All right, well, these are the main reasons that I found. There's other things that we've talked about, like traffic over here sucks. Yeah, whenever you live in a large city that's landlocked with the Puget Sound on one side, and you can only do so much with freeways and roadways going around, yeah, traffic's gonna be tough. That's the case for really any West Coast city and really any East Coast city. That's just what happens and what you have to expect when you're moving to those cities. But these are really the main complaints that we hear from people when they're moving out of the area. So if you're moving over here, there's a lot great that the Pacific Northwest offers that you can't get elsewhere in the country. Like the mild climate and how much there is to do outdoors here. Our summers are absolutely perfect around here. You can't get a much better summer than in the Pacific Northwest. There's great high-paying jobs and great schools. These are all reasons why people love living over here and why so many people move over here. But you've got to be aware of those other things, those downsides to living in this area, because it's not for everyone over here. You've got to make sure it's going to fit with your lifestyle. But as always, like I said, I'm an active real estate agent here in the greater Seattle area. I've helped out a lot of you over the years here when you've contacted me here from YouTube to make the move and purchase a home over here. So if that sounds like you, feel free to reach out to me. You can book a discovery call with me at the link below or reach out directly to me at my info there in the description. Thanks for watching this one.